In 1951, in the town of Wiedenbrück in occupied West Germany, a British officer walked into a coach-building shop called Westphalia and asked for something strange. He had a Volkswagen Transporter, a plain little delivery van with a flat floor, and he wanted to be able to sleep in it, so the shop built him a box. Plywood, a folding bed, a cabinet, and a place for a stove, and it slid in through the side door and lifted straight back out when he was done. They called it the camping box, and 75 years later, the great-grandchildren of that idea sit in every used car lot in Europe for about $2,000, and almost nobody in America has ever seen one. That gap is not an accident. Here is how deliberate it is. A few years ago, Ford was shipping a small van into Baltimore with rear seats fitted, then pulling those brand new seats straight back out on the dock and sending them off to be recycled. Seats installed and destroyed on purpose by one of the largest companies on earth, purely to walk a piece of paper past a tariff, and that tariff came out of an argument about frozen chicken. We are getting to all of it, but first the vehicle, because when I say camper van, your brain probably shows you a tall white Sprinter with a $150,000 sticker in the windshield. That is not what I am talking about. Across Europe, there is a vehicle class that barely exists in North America: the Citroën Berlingo, the Renault Kangoo, the Peugeot Partner, the Fiat Doblo, the Volkswagen Caddy, small, tall, boxy little vans with a squared-off cargo bay and a roofline high enough to sit up straight under, built by the millions for plumbers and bakers in Lyon, Turin, and Rotterdam, under 15 feet long, so they fit in an ordinary parking space. A tidy runner with a stamped service book sells in Spain or northern France for around $2,000, because in Europe, an old diesel work van is about as glamorous as a used wheelbarrow. And that is the vehicle a whole generation of Europeans has quietly been living in. Not vacationing in, living in, through winters in the Pyrenees, through summers on the Portuguese coast, parked on residential streets in Berlin and Bristol. So let me put the number next to the other number right now, because everything else hangs off it. Typical asking rent in this country sits close to $1,800 a month. Call it $21,000 a year, at the end of which you hold no equity, no asset, and no title, because what you bought was 12 months of permission to sleep indoors. $2,000 is 1 month of that, once. And unlike the rent, at the end of the year you still have the van, and you can sell it for close to what you paid, because a 15-year-old work van has already done almost all the depreciating it will ever do. Hold that comparison, because the rest of this is the story of why it was kept away from you. And it was never a fringe idea. Westphalia kept going, and by the 1960s, they were building full factory conversions with a sink, an icebox, and a canvas pop-top. In England, a coach builder in Folkestone called Martin Walter did the same to the Bedford CA delivery van, adding an elevating roof in 1957 that gave a grown man standing headroom inside something small enough to park on a terraced street. They called it the Dormobile, and the name caught on so completely that older Britons still use it to mean any camper van at all, the way Americans say thermos. Small camper vans in Europe are not a subculture. They are ordinary. Hold on to that word, because ordinary is exactly what this idea never got to be here. And America did not miss this. America invented its own version and walked away from it. In 1958, in Brown City, Michigan, a town of 1,300 people north of Detroit, a farmer and part-time trailer builder named Ray Frank built a self-propelled house on a Dodge truck chassis to take his family to Florida. He called it a motorhome, and that is where the word comes from. But the important part is what he did 10 years later. In 1968, Frank started building van campers, self-contained units, small enough to fit in a standard residential garage. That is generally credited as the first Class B motorhome in this country. A small van you could live in and still park at home. Same idea as Westphalia. built by an American, sold to Americans. Frank ended up in the RV Hall of Fame in Elkhart, Indiana, honored as the father of the motorhome. And the industry that put him on that wall spent the next 50 years building the exact opposite of the thing he made in 1968. Bigger, heavier, more of everything. Keep Elkhart in your head. We are going back there. So why does this shape work so well as a home? Because nobody designed it to be one. They designed it to be cheap to run in a country that punishes waste, and the home came out the other end for free. European fuel has been taxed brutally for decades, so the van had to sip, which meant a small diesel and almost no frontal area. European cities have streets laid out before anybody had a horse cart, so it had to be short and narrow to get down them. And the freight system runs on the Euro pallet, a standard skid about 4 feet by 2.5, so the cargo bay had to be exactly big enough to swallow one between the wheel arches. Follow those 3 requirements and you land, without meaning to, on a box with a flat floor about 6 feet long and 4 feet wide, with enough height to sit upright, which is a bed, a galley, and a wardrobe. The dimensions of a European delivery van and the dimensions of a small bedroom turn out to be the same dimensions. Nobody was paid to figure that out. It fell out of a shipping pallet. And that small volume is where the running costs collapse. The inside of one of these vans holds around 100 cubic feet of air. A studio apartment holds 50 times that. Heating is a fight against volume, so a small diesel heater sipping less than a cup of fuel an hour will hold a Kangoo at 70 degrees while it is snowing outside. And in summer, you are not fighting an air conditioner against the sun, because a vehicle can be moved into the shade or 400 miles north. A house can never do that. Everybody's instinct here is to go bigger, and bigger is what quietly ruins this. A tall white Sprinter with a roof rack, 4 solar panels and a surfboard on the side is a billboard. It gets a knock on the window at 2 in the morning, in a way that a scuffed little work van with a ladder rack and a faded company sticker never does, because that one reads as a job rather than a home. Then the money. A small European diesel returns around 40 miles to the gallon, and a big American conversion van gives you 15 if it is in a good mood. Insurance is a fraction of insurance on a registered motorhome, and any garage in any town can work on it. And then the part that matters most if you are past 60, which is that under 15 feet keeps you inside ordinary life. You fit in a normal space at the grocery store. You fit in the hospital parking structure and clear the height bar on the way in, which is not a small thing when the reason you are at a hospital is you. You fit in your daughter's driveway at Christmas. A big rig pushes you toward truck stops and campgrounds are where the savings go to die. The honest trade is headroom. In most of these you sit up, you do not stand up. A pop-top fixes it and costs more. So does any of this work where you live? Let me start with the place where the arithmetic gets almost rude. Quartzsite, Arizona, out on Interstate 10 near the California line. The Bureau of Land Management runs designated long-term visitor areas there, the La Posa areas along Highway 95, and the deal is published on a federal website anybody can read. $180 buys a permit good from September 15th to April 15th. 7 months, not per month. Total. 2 weeks is $40, and you can buy as many of those as you like. The permit works at all of these areas across Arizona and California. 7 months of legal, permitted winter, water, and dump station included, for $180, against $1,800 a month for an apartment. And the people already doing it are not 23-year-olds with cameras. Quartzsite in January is largely retirees. That town's whole winter economy is built on older Americans who worked this out a long time ago. Now real cold. 100 cubic feet with a properly vented diesel heater is a warm place to sleep on a night that would cost a house a fortune. And when it stops being reasonable, you drive. The van does not have to survive February in North Dakota. It can simply not be in North Dakota in February. which is the option the House never had. Then the hard one, a city street. Towns all over this country have ordinances written specifically to prohibit sleeping in a vehicle, and those rules change at the city line rather than the state line. That is the real wall, and I am coming back to it, because it is where the money finally shows itself. But first, the limits, because if I gloss over them, you should stop listening to me. $2,000 buys the vehicle, not a finished home. You will want insulation, a bed platform, a leisure battery with a solar panel, a small vented heater, a roof fan, and some way to handle water and waste. With plywood and second-hand parts, that is several hundred to a couple $1,000s. If you are not doing that work yourself, and plenty of people watching this should not be crawling around a van floor with a drill, a local shop, or a handy grandson turns it into a few weekends and a bit more money. Look at what that admission costs you, though. A few thousand more. Not $21,000 every year for the rest of your life, and not the six-figure version with a badge on the side. The vehicle was never the expensive part. The van costs pennies. The permission costs a fortune. Remember that sentence, because in about 4 minutes, you will see what I mean by it. Now, if you are thinking seriously about this, or you are already sleeping in a vehicle tonight, or somebody in your family is, and you are worried about them, there are parts of this I cannot get into on this channel, where you can actually park week to week, how people handle an address and their mail, how to stay warm without poisoning yourself, and the cost cutting that turns this from getting by into something you would honestly recommend. Some of that gets videos removed, and I would rather this place stay up. So I put it in writing instead. It is called the Van Life Savings Manual, and it walks through the setups, the parking, the power, the heat, the paperwork, and the mistakes, with real numbers from this year rather than somebody's guess from a decade ago. There is a code on your screen right now that you can scan with your phone, and the link is in the description below. Grab it, then come back, because this next part is the one that should make you angry. In 1963, France and West Germany put tariffs on American frozen chicken. American producers had gotten very good at raising birds cheaply. European farmers were losing, and Europe slammed the door. So in 1964, the Johnson administration retaliated, and among the things it picked to punish were potato starch, brandy, and light trucks. That last one was aimed squarely at the Volkswagen Transporter, which was selling well in America at the time. The tariff was set at 25%. The chicken dispute faded into history. The tariff did not. It is still on the books today, 60 years later, and it applies to any light truck or cargo van imported into the United States. 25% on top of the landed cost is not a speed bump. It is a wall, and it is the single biggest reason the cheap, efficient work vans every European tradesman drives were never worth shipping across the Atlantic, which is where that Ford story comes back. Starting in 2009, Ford built the Transit Connect in Turkey and shipped it into Baltimore, with rear seats and windows fitted, so it would clear customs as a passenger wagon at 2.5% instead of a cargo van at 25%. At the port, workers pulled the brand new seats out and sent them to be recycled. Customs eventually challenged it, and the courts sided against Ford, but a company that big found it cheaper to build seats and destroy them than to pay that tariff, which tells you the size of the wall. Then the second gear, fuel economy rules. American standards are indexed to a vehicle's footprint, roughly the rectangle between the wheels, and a bigger footprint gets an easier target. So a builder of small, efficient vans is held to a stricter standard than one building something enormous. The rule written to save fuel quietly made it commercially stupid to sell Americans anything small. Now the third gear, and this one has a zip code. Indiana builds the overwhelming majority of every recreational vehicle sold in North America, most of it inside Elkhart County, the place that calls itself the RV capital of the world. It is also where Ray Frank's plaque hangs, And the product that industry sells you when you say camper van is a Class B motorhome, a Sprinter, or a Transit with a build inside it, listing new, well into six figures. That business does not run on vehicles, it runs on financing. Dealer floor plan on one end, a long-term loan on your end, sometimes stretched 20 years, on an asset that sheds a huge chunk of its value the day it leaves the lot. A $2,000 van a man insulates in his own driveway is not a smaller sale. It is a customer who never walks in again. And then the last gear, which is where you are allowed to sleep. Overnight parking ordinances, written specifically to prohibit habitation in a vehicle. Homeowners associations. Campgrounds that will not take anything that is not a registered RV. Insurers who get strange when you tell them you live in the thing. Nobody voted to keep you poor. The tariff protects a trade position nobody alive remembers. The fuel rule protects the big vehicle. The dealer protects the note. The town protects property values. And you, standing there with $2,000 and a plan, are the one thing none of them have a category for. So here is the door, because there is one, and it has been open the whole time. Federal law exempts a vehicle 25 years old or older from federal motor vehicle safety standards. That is the rule that lets Americans import old Land Cruisers and Japanese vans, and it applies just as cleanly to a 1999 Berlingo. Importers handle the shipping and the paperwork, and the vehicle lands legal, titled and yours. And if importing sounds like more adventure than you want at this stage of your life, the shortcuts are on the classifieds right now. The Ford Transit Connect, the one from the Seat Story, is cheap used here and very close to the European formula. An old Chevrolet Astro or GMC Safari gives you a longer flat floor for less money than almost anything else on four wheels. The shape is the point, not the badge. Now, 6 things that will bite you. These only matter if you are actually going to do this. And at this point, I suspect a few of you are. Number 1 is rust. The mechanical parts on an old van are usually fine, and the metal is what kills it. Get underneath before you buy. Check the sills, the wheel arches, and the floor pan, and walk away from anything soft. Number 2 is parts. Spend 20 minutes confirming that filters, belts, and brake parts actually ship to your country. Common European models are fine because they built millions. Something rare is a beautiful way to get stranded. Number 3 is condensation. A person breathing overnight in a sealed metal box puts out a surprising amount of water, and it goes into the walls and grows mold. You need a roof vent, a small fan, and airflow behind your insulation. Do not seal it like a jar. Number 4 is heat, and this one can kill you, so I am not going to soften it. Never sleep with an unvented flame or a propane burner running for warmth in a small space. Use a properly installed heater that vents outside, and put a carbon monoxide alarm where you will hear it go off. People die from this every winter, and every one of those deaths was avoidable. Number 5 is parking. The vehicle is never the problem. Rules change at the city line, and the whole game is knowing them before you arrive, rather than at 2 in the morning with a flashlight tapping on your window. Number 6 is the paperwork of being a person. You still need an address for your license and your mail. You still want health coverage, and if you are on Social Security or a pension, you want that landing somewhere reliable. There are boring legal ways to handle all of it, and the people who do well sort it out in the first month instead of the first crisis. So picture the 2 versions of the same man. In one, he is signing another 12-month lease at a number that went up again, understanding that in a year he will own exactly what he owns today, which is nothing, and will be asked to do it again. In the other, he is standing in his own driveway next to a tall, boxy little work van some European plumber gave up on, with a plywood bed in the back, a fan in the roof, and a $180 permit in the windshield that covers him from September to April. The first of the month comes around and nothing leaves his account. The vehicle costs 1 month of the first version. That is the whole thing. It has been sitting in plain sight since a British officer asked a coach builder for a box he could sleep in, proven by 75 years of Europeans doing it every single day, and kept off your street by a tariff nobody alive remembers voting for. The van costs pennies. The permission costs a fortune. If this pulled back even a little of that curtain for you, subscribing is the simplest way to keep this kind of thing findable, because this is exactly the sort of knowledge that quietly gets pushed down. And do me one favor in the comments. Go look up your own town's overnight parking ordinance and tell me how many hours you are legally allowed to sleep in a vehicle on a public street where you live. Put the number below. I want to see how tall the wall is in your town. If you found this one useful, the video on your screen right now goes even deeper.